I remember when we first pulled into jetty at Moresby, looking up on the hill at Moresby town, I could see quite a lot of, as was the case in those days. I mean, now you use a toilet and eat and do everything inside. In those days, your toilet was down the yard. And I remember seeing up there in Moresby a number of these toilets, no houses, because Moresby had been getting bombed day in, day out at that stage a lot. In fact, someone said that was right up almost to the day we arrived, they didn't bomb it. Of course, we couldn't get up probably quick enough before they did it. And then we're aboard and went aboard trucks heading for our base at Aitiki. Of course, we had to push the trucks most of the way because they had so much rain there, and there weren't bitumen roads, they were muddy roads, and we had to push our trucks nearly half the way till we got to Aitiki. And do you want me to carry on just with the Aitiki part of it, or that was our base camp? So we were based at Aitiki. You hear of another place called Kaiteki, which they went to later, but we were at Aitiki. And there we were there for a couple of days and built our own bits of shelters from the rain with palm leaves and that sort of thing. And I can well remember when we were being addressed there, being told what the job was in front of us. Never had a clue really where we were going, what it was like. Being told that they believed that about 1,200 Japanese had landed on the North Shore. And I can even remember to this day thinking to myself, oh, well, that's not bad odds. I mean, there'd be about 600 of us and probably the same as the 2nd, 14th. And I believe that at that stage, some CMF chaps thought that was the 39th, 50th. I thought that's pretty good odds. Didn't know that 1,200 was really turned out to be more like 12,000 as it seemed to happen. But we were ignorant of that. And that's how good the knowledge was that we were getting, intelligence knowledge. Then, of course, we set off for with no idea of what was going to happen of the trek over the Owen Stanley Ranges. I was at number 2 on the Bren gun, so I was in between with the number 1 and the number 3, carrying my rifle and the Bren, whichever, pretty heavy too, damned heavy. The Golden Stairs, that was the killer, and that's how you sort of started off your trek. I mean, the Golden Stairs, I don't know how many there were. I mean, I've read so many different versions of the number of stairs there were, but someone said 4,000, someone said 2,000. But when you think that Jacob's Ladder is, I rang them and they said, I saw the other day it was 300. I rang Kings Park Board about it once. They said, oh, roughly 250. So steps. So if you say there was only 2,000 steps, that'd be 8 times up Jacob's Ladder in the one day with a full pack on, wasn't it? You know, in the rain. And I've always been pretty good on the tooth, tucker. And when we got up to the top that day, I couldn't eat a morsel. I was so exhausted I couldn't eat. Someone gave me a Dixie of black sweet tea, which I'd never had in my life. It was like manna from heaven. And that was all I had for that day. I was so exhausted. And of course, next day you had to go down the other side, which was almost worse when the backs of your legs and your thighs burned, don't they? So then it was just up and down for days. And I remember one day when we were travelling over some pretty open country, these aeroplanes went over, or fighter planes were over the top of us. Oh, they're strange looking things over there. We call them P-35, the Lightnings, twin fuselage, which never seen before, and that was the first we'd seen. Of course, they were heading from Moresby. They were ours, fortunately, we weren't to know. Heading probably up towards going to Abuari way. And of course, we were up and down these different hills, past Nauru and Malani, and then Manari. Malani was in the Sunshine Coast. Manari, and then on to Maiola. Maiola is, of course, it's way up in the mountains, and yet it's a big swamp in a way, but it's pretty well dried out. And that's where the biscuit bombers first came into operation, and of course they had been supposed to be there before us and dropped our supplies there, but as it so happened, the Americans, with all their knowledge, all their planes in Moresby apparently had been lined up like soldiers, and when the Japs hadn't come over, they just had bombed them, and I think they only survived about 2 DC-3s or whatever they called them at the time. And that's where we saw them. That was the first of the biscuit bombers. They'd come down one end of the swamp, and of course they didn't have parachutes on the stuff they dropped. They just kicked it out the side of the ship, so you could watch these wrapped up in blankets. You could watch these parcels land, and that they would land, and next thing they'd go like that, and bully beef and biscuits and ammunition or whatever would just be burst and explode. I did believe that they dropped us some mortar barrels, but the mortars just kept on going, went down into the ground, and they dropped, I don't know how they knew, but they dropped a big bag of mail for us. And one of our officers, Bert Madigan, he was in charge of 12th Platoon. He was from the northwest, and I reckon he was a good bushy. So he went out to get that bag of mail, and Bert came back about 3 days later. I think it was about 3 days before he found his way. So his platoon, 12th Platoon, went into action without him, because he was still, looking for the mail. But even though he was a bushy, he'd wandered that far out looking for the mail. He didn't, I don't know whether I suppose he found the mail eventually, I don't know. So from there then, when we had able to get our supplies, because Potsy wouldn't let us go down with them, and because we were only carrying our, what was it, about 50 rounds of ammunition, and that was all being dropped for us, you know, he wouldn't let us go without it. That's why we were a couple of days behind the 2nd, 14th. So then when we got going, we headed down and down towards where the shooting gallery was, and I can well remember when we got down towards it that would have been, without knowing, would have probably been overlooking Ishua Harbour. And to this day I can still hear that was my first initiation there of what was going on. You could hear the light machine guns, rat-a-tat-tat, and the heavy machines going pop, 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 and then all of a sudden you'd hear an explosion, bang, it would be a mortar or a mountain gun going off. I'm not being a bigfoot about this, but it didn't worry you. You just heard this noise down in the valley, you know. And then we got our orders that we had to head to the right and look for the Japs up towards Abuari.